I'd call to order this work session for the Supervisor of Wight County.
Call to order the Wight County School Board.
Welcome, everybody. This is intended to be relatively informal so that we can use it, obviously, to continue to build our relationship, but more importantly, to share important information prior to really diving into our budget this coming up year. So I think the board would say that we're all excited for this opportunity, and I think it will be very productive, I'm sure it will be. So,
Likewise.
sounds good. All right. You want to order?
Or roll call?
Go ahead. We don't do roll call.
Y'all done? All right.
It's okay.
We'll follow the agenda then for the schools.
That's good.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cunningham,
Here.
Mr. Pollock,
Here.
Mrs. Perkins, here. Mr. Wooster,
Here.
and Mr. Marsh.
Here.
Very good.
And then we'll ask Mr. Wooster to do a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. So we're rising.
She has a flag on the computer.
Hold on. Let me get the copyright off there.
I do too.
First.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chairman Acree, I would love to say that I appreciate how we're set up today by districts.
And you said that because you're right there in the microphone.
Yes, so that we can sit with our district partner.
Mr. Wooster, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Who was
Motion
that?
second. Madam Clerk?
Was that Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Cunningham,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yes.
Mrs. Perkins, yes. Mr. Wooster,
Yes.
and Mr. Marsh.
And on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, I need a motion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
So
My goodness, it's a tie.
double trouble.
Let's go with Mr. Rosie on that. Rainey, can you?
Which one said it?
No, Rosie.
Don.
Any discussion? Hearing none? You call them out, Rainey? Or somebody?
We have Courtney tonight.
Oh, Courtney. Sorry, Courtney, I didn't see you.
Mr. Rosie?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Ms. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Carty?
Yes.
Chairman Avery?
Yes. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. All right.
All right, so we've got opening comments. I think we can jump into it unless you want
Yeah,
to
I mean, unless somebody,
comment.
any comments from the board or?
One comment, I just, I think we've worked at trying to have more sessions and opportunities with the school board, and I really appreciate the fact that we have moved in that direction. I think it's only going to help more communication, the better we understand one another, we get better, and more opportunities we have to work together, so I really appreciate this.
I think it should go without the saying, Jason and I were just talking a while ago, you know, everybody in this room is very busy with their lives and their families and their jobs, and also the service to the community. So getting the opportunity to sit down at the table with both bodies is a challenge for us all. So on behalf of the citizens of the county, I thank you all for y'all's time and your time away from your families and other things that you could have been doing this evening. As we all know, this is important to our county and obviously for the future of our county.
Brendan, I would love to welcome you to the town of Smithfield and to the lovely Manor House. I've given several tours already, but happy to show anyone around who hasn't been. So we're proud of it.
So the first thing we have on the agenda, we have it written as student growth projections. One of the things that I personally kind of banged the drum on for some time is talking about student growth projections. And there's plenty of hype and conversation and whatnot about growth in the county as a whole. And I know that last year and the year before that, there was quite a bit of discussion about student growth populations, so on and so forth. One of the things that I've come to learn and has become near and dear to me is hopefully explaining and understanding to everybody listening the difference between our building capacities and our school's program capacities, because they're certainly not one and the same. And I know that Mrs. Briggs and Mrs. Getz and Dr. Coleman, under Dr. Kramer's guys, have worked quite a bit on this, not just this week, but for some time now. So I think just turn it over to them and let them see what they, let us listen to them and open it up for some conversation.
Are we working off a different agenda?
We are, apparently it's not the same agenda.
Oh, okay.
But same thing happened last time for the most part.
I guess there's consistency between the two. Just make one change, there's a full post in the library, I think is the only thing.
Mine starts with new school construction.
But we'll work through it, make sure we cover both.
Actually, this is a great segue to start into that.
Perfect.
So it's conversation.
I think we're fine.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
fine.
I think they're naturally gonna contact.
That's a work session, we'll be all right. We'll hit all the items and board members, I'm sure will speak up. There's something additional they'd like to add as we go along.
Over to you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So yes, Ms. Briggs and I have definitely done some number crunching, and we want to share that information with you. Before we do that, I'd like to just review how we got to where we are with our schools. So if you don't know, in 2018, we had a committee looking at growth and capacity and what we needed at that time. And that's how New Hardy came to be. When New Hardy opened, we also, well, let me, before I get to that, which we decided what we would do is New Hardy, build another school, which would be like a replacement for West Side. Hardy would be pre-K through 4. A new West Side would be grades 5, 6, and 7. The current Smithfield Middle would be grades 8 and 9, like a junior high school. And the high school, current high school, would be grades 10, 11, and 12. Which at the time, that looked like a good plan moving forward. To accomplish that plan, the current West Side 4th grade would have to be moved back to Carolton Elementary, their zoned school. What we have realized, even with rezoning approximately 100 students from Carolton to Hardy Elementary when Hardy opened last year, which we've done, even with doing that, we do not have room at Carolton to move the 4th grade students back. We cannot do it. It's not possible. So, it is going to leave us with some decisions I think that we need to make. So I don't know that that 5, 6, 7 school is really going to be the thing that is going to solve our problems, because that is contingent upon moving the 4th grade West Side students back to Carolton, which we don't have space. So, with that said, let's talk about program capacity. That's one of the things that we do look at each year because it does change from year to year. And I'm going to give you an example as to why that might change. So if we have more special education students, which this is what tends to happen, we have seen an influx of early childhood special education students and students with multiple disabilities. Both of these populations require, we would call self-contained classrooms, and they are restrictions on the size of those classrooms. So you can't take a classroom with early childhood special education students and put 20 students in there. It's not allowed. It's typically going to be about 8 kids in a classroom. So we have to have spaces for them. When we put spaces for them, it might take spaces from other programs. So that's why we look at program capacity. So you may have in a classroom, you could put 24 students in that classroom, but the program is now special education classroom, and we can only put 8, let's say. So that's why we look at program capacity. So one of the things we did is we looked at that. We also looked at what spaces are currently being utilized by programs that we could possibly shift, move, do something different in order to create that space and use it as a classroom. So we try to look at all possible scenarios. And I'll give you an example of that. So at Hardy Elementary right now, there is a space that is being used for like an office space. It is a classroom, but there's 3 people who are like functioning, using that as office space. Well, we know if push comes to shove, we're going to use that as a classroom, and we're going to move those people out. So when we look at program capacity, we are counting those spaces as classroom spaces, even though they might not be currently utilized as that. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Okay, so what I think would be a good thing to do now is let's pass out and look at the program capacity based on our current enrollment numbers, and based on what we're saying that building can take on as the top enrollment for that building. And then we did a percentage to say what is the percentage of capacity that building is at. And I think that will help generate some questions. The other thing we did is we took the current areas that are, current neighborhoods that are under construction, and we have used our cooperative strategies report and kind of predicted out based on that report what the enrollment would be and what the capacity would be. And then at the very bottom, you will see these are proposed, also developments that have not yet started, but they have been approved. Not approved, proposed. Sorry.
Because I've never seen one.
Proposed, not yet approved.
I saw it in the Smithfield Times, but I've seen it in y'all's literature. I've not seen it as a board.
So if we can just focus up at the top, if you wouldn't mind, and you look at the capacity of Hardy, Carolton, Westside, Smithfield Middle, and Smithfield High. And then if you look at the September 30th enrollment, and then you will see where we calculated out the percentage that that building is occupied, utilized.
That's current.
Current, right now, today.
Sorry, what line is that?
It says, if you look at program capacity, 20, yeah, thank you. Then September 30th enrollment, and then utilization, the percentage of how much of that building is used.
Do you happen to have a percentage change from like the last year or before, or in a generalization, have they been pretty steady, or has there been a jump?
No, it wasn't really too much of a jump when we looked at it. We had some slight shifts because of, like I talked about, the program capacity. We've increased in special education programs, which means we've taken spaces that could have been used for classrooms, like full-size gen ed classrooms, and so that has increased some of our program capacities. So that is going to be reflected in these numbers. And that does change from year to year.
Ms. Getz, if I recall, it was last month or month before, we did a SPED presentation.
Yes.
Don't quote me on the numbers, keep me honest. But if I recall, from 2016 to 2023, SPED student enrollment was up 21%.
Yep.
And that's not to say that all 21% required additional space, but
22%.
22%. So
Yes,
it
sir.
certainly shows that the SPED students population is growing.
And I will even take it a step further because our early childhood has increased since 2016, 49%. And our multiple disability category has increased 25%, and autism 17%. And these are classrooms that, like I said, there are usually restrictions on how many kids we can put in a single space. So that means we need more spaces that then may take spaces from other programs.
Is early childhood 4-year-olds? Is that?
It could be 3, yep, the 3 or 4-year-olds. And we we do service little ones even for like, walk-in services, but we have classrooms for 3 years and 4-year-olds.
But I think what's important to glean from this top section is that that's a program capacity. And if you were just to look at the building's capacity, it would look a lot better.
It's going to look very, very different when you look at because a building capacity, they're using all available spaces that you could possibly put kids. But we know, like in an art classroom, that's not a gen ed classroom. So you have to have art classrooms, you have to have gen ed classrooms. You can't necessarily say that that is going to be a realistic program capacity. It just doesn't work that way.
Trevor, if I could ask a question, so makes perfect sense. So my only question is, where does the numbers for the program, where's the algorithm or the formula for program capacity? Where does it originate? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
So the Virginia Department of Education has guidelines for facilities.
Those are things that we're not going to know. I mean, the school board's going to know, but how are we going to know if we don't ask?
Sure. That's why we're here, right?
Yep.
Great question.
There are guidelines for facilities, and in that they have tables for calculating program capacity at elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And they will give you, a number of students. For example, you determine how many SPED classrooms you have that are self-contained, multiply those by 8, and that gets your capacity for special education. If it's kindergarten, 1st through 3rd grade, you're multiplying those numbers by 24. If it's 4th and 5th, you multiply by 25. So using that, you calculate what your program capacity is going to be. Elementary is pretty straightforward because it's basically self-contained and grade level spaces, because that's where you're going to have students assigned. When you get to high school, then you're really looking at all of those programs, and we do have limitations at the high school level on career and technical ed classes because some of those are limited to 20 per OSHA. So they're capped at 20.
I think it's worth pointing out that there are some programs that we do for the county that aren't necessarily required. Virginia Preschool Initiative is one of them, right? That's not necessarily something that's required, but that's something that we offer.
Well, no, that is money we do get from the state, and then we have a local match. Little Sprouts, I'll Grow, those are other programs that we have for early childhood special education students. Those are not necessarily, Little Sprouts is not, but the other ones, they're not necessarily, I'll Grow, for example, is not necessarily required, but it is a program that we offer for early childhood. Little Sprouts, that's where we do, we have our CTE students that push in. That's not a required setting, but it's fantastic, and it does offer childcare for some of our employees. But it takes a room, it takes a space.
That's the point. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing I really think that we need to point out is Smithfield Middle and Smithfield High School. This is a major area of concern. So Smithfield High School currently uses 19 classrooms in the middle school. That's the only way we're able to function. 19 classrooms are used. If you took those 19 classrooms out and dedicated that space to Smithfield Middle School, it would give us a little more flexibility. However, we do not have 19 classrooms at Smithfield High School, and that would only be for right now today, that would cover our students' 19 classrooms. If we were to project out, we probably need at least 30 additional classrooms at Smithfield High School.
So basically, what I'm hearing is we're going to need another high school at some point in the northern end.
I don't think so, Mr. Collick, because I think the high school is probably the last thing that you want to build. I would probably say that we look at middle before we looked at high, just because of the expense of building a high school.
So we've got to ask the question, how many students do we want in a high school? You know, people aren't moving to Isle of Wight to send their kids to a city high school.
No, sir, you are correct. Currently we're at 1,300. I think you can still be a reasonable size even if you're at 1,500, 1,600, 1,700. I mean, there are high schools that are easily 3,000. I do not want to get to that point. But if we're under, 2,000, I mean, there's a lot of high schools that are 1,800.
Sorry,
But it's a
several.
good question, and that's something y'all will have to answer for sure.
Yeah, and I think at some point, the board's gonna have to, both boards really, are gonna have to make the determination, what is the maximum student load we want in our schools?
Well, you know, it was interesting when I heard the kind of introduction to this space needs or space usage. When we, wasn't too many years ago, this board went out and visited the old Hardy Elementary. At the time, school board had proposed doing a facelift, doing some front renovations, some adding some things, that kind of stuff. And we started asking questions. I think the school board or school administration had already done some preliminary engineering to see if the bones were good. We, I think, ended up getting another contractor or another firm to come in and reevaluate. And at the time, this board, our board of supervisors, thought it was a need. Not just for the size, but the experience too. We felt like every child needs to be able to have the same experience. You shouldn't be penalized because you're zoned at a certain school. And not to take anything from that school, because as we all learned during that, and this is to my point, we learned that the educators there were just amazing, and still are for that matter. But we also learned about things like, what do you want to invest? Where do you invest? Where do you get the biggest bang for your buck? And I think immediately some people were shooting for the high school because it's big. I mean, people go there all the time, football games, etc. But we learned, or at least I learned at the time, the costs associated with that, and some of the, I guess, requirements that the state has when you go to build a facility like that. It's not just another big building. There's other things that are accompany that, which are big ticket items. So I think the idea was, or has been, and I heard you kind of say this, is to shift things. And I think it also adds, just as a parent, adds to the experience. Because once you get to be at a certain age group, we'll say maybe a junior or senior, things that you're into, I only speak when I was in school, but things have changed significantly, or more probably better kept to 10th, 11th, 12th grade, or 11th, 12th grade, as opposed to, back in my day, 7th through 12th. So, I mean, we've learned that over the years. But when you just introduced that part of it, the Hardy and then West Side, because I think I had mentioned the West Side, I went to West Side, and it's been improved quite a bit since the days of us walking around the holes that went down into the basement, right, Mark? There were desks and trash cans and pieces of rope so it wouldn't fall into the basement. And the mildew, as kids, we used to go through the auditorium and smack the curtains because the mildew and the dust and stuff would fall, and the kids behind you couldn't see them. But in all seriousness, that was kind of, I had better memories of Hardy because at the time, when I look back, it was relatively new. So I had really kind of had my sights on the West Side at the time. But then again, I learned that there's costs associated even when you go to a middle school compared to an elementary school. But with that, I'll stop running my mouth. But I think it's really important. I know I've learned a lot about what it takes to, I still don't know enough, I guess, but what it takes. It's not just a matter of how many classrooms, how many kids you have. So,
I think to echo your point, sir, I think it was my third week on the board, I toured the schools, and walking into Smithfield, which is 1,300, 1,500 kids?
13.
Windsor High School has what, 400 thereabout? It's apples and oranges.
It
It's
is.
a completely different experience.
and it's always was that way when I was there.
Yeah, just a historical perspective from someone who's been around. When that school opened, one of the original thoughts was as Smithfield High grew, it would grow into Smithfield Middle and you would build a new middle because it would be less expensive. So that's why they were built connected on the same campus to allow for that possibility down the road.
I mean, I would say, Mr. Collins, your point is well taken. There are communities in this country that will limit the size of a high school. And if they give a certain number, whether that's 1,500 or 1,600, they cap it to a lesser extent and build another school. So again, that's a decision these two boards would have to make, but that point is very valid.
Yeah, and I was saying it more for, planning over the next 10 years. Okay, it's not something we need next week. But one thing I would not like to see is building another school on Turner Drive. No, I think, however we utilize that, I think when we build another school, for instance, for the middle school, we need to find a good location for it and keep in mind the amount of time that our students would be on the school bus, okay, so we can put it strategically somewhere to minimize the amount of time the kids are on the bus. And minimize the impact of traffic, because if we would build another school the way a previous board, wanted to do it, that traffic on Turner would just, probably double, okay? And that's a concern that I have. But again, we're just chatting here,
Well,
throwing out some ideas.
And I think you bring up a good point. As we collaborate as two boards, it's important that we get on the political side of this, particularly at our state and federal level. This board, as y'all know, we went after to at least be able to get our citizens an opportunity to leverage some tax money, sales tax, and that kind of fell through, to say the least. And then there's another aspect of this, and there's some programs out there. For example, and Randy, correct me on the numbers, the taxes that we realized last year from residential growth, I think it was 1.2 million, we'll say for the sake of conversation, but because of programs, we actually ended up at $400,000 in the hole.
Right.
So you see all this growth, you said, where's the tax money coming? Well, because of some of the programs that our state and federal legislators have come up with, we, as citizens of the county, trying to do the best we can, are not able to get, we're not seeing the money.
Absolutely.
And, I have citizens all the time say, I'm looking at Ben's grant, where's the money? Why don't we have new schools? Why don't we have this? And they're looking at the residential growth, of course, but it's going the opposite way of where we need to go. And I think that's where collaborating, like you said, planning ahead is so important. And we use everything that we have as a community to try to get our state legislation. Obviously, we're going to do our part at the local level. I think we've always done that. But the state and federal part is so important to this.
Absolutely.
My question is about Windsor, because the statistics are fantastic, but it just covers Smithfield in the northern end, right? And I know everyone knows we have DSDs, and we have other places that are going to grow. And so I wonder if it is an option to move lines that way, right? So like if Smithfield High School is 1,323 and Windsor is 400 or 500, could Windsor be 700? I mean, just asking, and it would be helpful to have something similar to this presentation for the South End.
I think you bring up a really good point, not to monopolize the time here, but where I live, when I moved in my house in 1990, I was zoned for Carolton and Smithfield, obviously. And it wasn't long after we were there, I think Gatlin Point ended up getting rezoned to Carolton, and we got moved to Windsor. And I use that term because at the time that's how we felt. But our educational experience out in Windsor was wonderful. It was perfect for my children at the time, or Brendan in particular. And so it really, unanswered prayers there. So it worked in our favor. And I know that it's inconvenient for a lot of people that work on the peninsula and that kind of stuff, as it was for us. But the educational experience was worth the move when it was all said and done.
So currently, we are zoned pretty far down already. Like just beyond Turner Drive is Windsor. You would have to come so far down that you would have to go past Smithfield High School and zone that far, which I can't see the logic personally in, having a student who would have to pass Smithfield High School to get to their school in Windsor. And that's what we would be talking about. It's just it's just so dense. We do have space in the other end and in those schools. But the question is, how far are you willing to pull from Smithfield and Carolton to send those kids to Windsor schools?
And the bus rides now are, in some cases on those routes, are exceeding 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And as y'all know, I have a special needs son that attended elementary school. In an hour plus bus ride with the challenges that my child had, we couldn't have it, honestly. I mean, if the bus was running a little bit late because of no fault of anybody's, it was really detrimental to his experience.
I mean, I feel terrible, any child having to be on the bus for an hour or more, and I mean, we have that exists. So, I mean, it's how far are we willing to go, I guess. Could it be done? Yes, it can. But is it good for our students?
That's always the hard question, because when you think of a new school, and you look at, to take care of the debt service for the next potential facility, you're looking at roughly a 9-cent tax increase on citizens. So, I mean, that's a great question for citizens, which which direction would they want to nudge their school board or the board of supervisors, build another school to make it in closer proximity, or deal with a 9-cent tax increase just to build the new school when you haven't staffed it or done any of the other things that are associated with it. So, I mean, it does present some real things that we have to juggle with, you know, and chew on together. And they're tough subjects, they really are.
I just wanted to point out that Mallory Point, Scott Farm, as well as Sweetgrass have proffered rate limiting sales by year. So, you know, that may be something as you're looking at the hard numbers, right? To make projections of students, they're only able to build a certain number of homes per year. So that'll help as far as like when we're looking at having to do some of these things.
I think, I'll throw this in the air, maybe somebody will catch a football. I think that the numbers below that top section, those are from cooperative strategies, which has undoubtedly been a point of contention in the past. I won't speak for anyone else, but I feel fairly confident saying that no one at the schools really cares where those numbers are calculated from or who calculates them, as long as it takes into account what we're seeing for programs. And I know that you folks have hired a third party. I don't know the scope of that. I don't know the direction.
So you're talking about Tischler Bice?
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah, originally, Randy, you want to speak to originally what they did and how the engagement is?
Yeah, so we have them, they work on our capital model, so when we have a new development, instead of relying on the developers to propose what they thought the student generation rate would be and propose whether they should offer profits or not, we decided to hire a company themselves, and then they built a capital model for us, and then we could plug in the numbers to spit out how many students and what the capital impact should be from that development.
So you guys.
So this new engagement has to do with growth projections, also with Tischler Bice, went to RFP, chose the same company that happened to do the capital model, and so it's a refresh of that. Study costs a lot less, but it's to support the revision of the comprehensive plan. So the 20-year vision or comprehensive plan was done in 2020. Every 5 years you revise it, right? And so we're within a year of the revision, and so it was time to engage Tischler Bice to say, at a 2% growth rate, or a 2.5%, or a 1%, or a 1.5% growth rate, at these different sections, what are you going to need for parks, schools, all of these things. And so that's, really falling under Amy Ring and her department, as well as the Planning Commission and the Growth Task Force that's under the Planning Commission to revise the comp plan.
And their projections have been pretty solid, they've been good.
Well, we heard from them last month, and they should wrap up the engagement in March of 2025. So we've heard nothing yet from the second round with Tischler Bice.
Historically.
But they're a very well-known company that does this for a lot of localities. So they built the capital model for us a few years ago to help us project what, if any profit should be paid. And that's been, the developers are agreeing to those.
Yeah, so every project that comes to us, it'll say, hey, this is going to throw the middle school over by 2, or, whatever. It'll say at each age classification what the impact is going to be. And it seems reasonable. Does cooperative strategies and Tischler Bice, do those match exactly? Probably not. We're talking pretty broad brush strokes here, right? We're not fighting over a handful of students.
Consistency, and it saves us money.
Right.
Why not?
Can I interject something? Sorry to interrupt. So the Tischler Bice study that was done 5 years ago actually incorporated our cooperative strategies student yield numbers in their projections. So they used the ones from cooperative strategies to help with the model that they produced. So they're looking at using our 2023 cooperative strategies student yield numbers to develop this new one. So the nice thing is that what's going to be developed by Tischler Bice for the county is going to use the numbers that we got from cooperative strategy. So I do imagine they're going to probably be pretty close.
So long story short, we can take your end result and mesh it together and kind of update this?
That's all.
I think this deals with, as, you know, Ms. Getz explained, I think this takes in program capacity. So this is much more close and specific to, I think, what your needs are, right? Than just, I think some of those models that we get from, I can't speak to cooperative strategies, but certainly from Tischler Advice, it's like square footage and overall
That's what-
space.
yes.
And I feel like this is a
Yes.
lot more detailed and customized to us. So.
And the program capacity is going to change each year.
It
as
does.
you know, so they're looking, like I said, a broad brush of capacity of the school, not necessarily the program, because you don't know exactly what that programs are.
That is absolutely correct.
But just to clarify, you've taken for this program capacity study and like the office with that could be a classroom with 3 people.
Yes.
You've used that, you've included that as available.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, Doolin uses a classroom at the back of the school for athletic department, right?
It's not a full-size classroom.
Right, but you've taken that and you could
Yep.
fill that if you had to.
Yep, that could be a special education classroom.
Right.
Yes, we've done that. That's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I hope if nothing else, we can all leave here with the agreement that what we don't want to do is 1, 2, 3 years down the road, have to have a conversation about buying modular buildings.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us, I hope nobody wants to do that.
All I can say is when I went to school, we went to school in Buffalo buildings. And as an outdoor kid that maybe should have been more concentrated in school, I really enjoyed the fresh air, walking around and seeing the birds and all that stuff. But y'all probably aren't surprised by that.
Yeah.
As a kid, I enjoyed the modular classrooms and get out of the school. That was just as a kid.
I mean, it looks
I
like
don't
you
say I
all,
want my children to go that.
looks like you all have an operational policy that's outlined at the bottom of this action 1, 2, and 3, right? That is kind of leading us to action.
I mean, we're definitely, you know, and again, you know, we're not, you know, experts in, but, I mean, we can certainly look at the numbers. We know what our buildings currently have. We can look at projections and we can say, you know, we're gonna have to make some decisions about elementary and middle. We're gonna have to make some decisions. And, you know, we've already had a lot of discussion about replacing West Side. I don't think anybody can argue that, you know, that's a need. So there's decisions that are going to be need to be made, but there are glaring needs. Something's going to need to be done at some point.
I want to go back to the developments that are under construction currently. And I brought this up previously. One thing we cannot argue is, you know, the growth rate on that end of the county, it's substantial. We're not getting away from that. But I'm looking at the ones that are currently under construction. Number one, do we have a time frame for construction completion? That's my first question. And based on these housing developments, how are these numbers of students being determined? Because the way I look at it, and I brought this up before, I think at best it is a best guess on numbers, or is there a certain formula that they utilize to determine this?
I can speak to that. I can tell you, I know, I spoke with Amy today, Ben's Grant Apartments and Brewer Station Apartments, and I believe the Crossings and Cypress Creek, they are still under construction, and Ben's Grant may be coming to completion soon.
It's getting close.
Thanks,
Cypress Creek Phase 6 is done.
Okay.
There's one lot for sale in the whole neighborhood.
Okay, so that's, because I was wondering, do any of these need to be rolled out of under construction?
Right.
But the impression I had from her was to leave them. Now, we know Mallory Point is, right, that should come online, we think, next year. So, Mr. Wooster, what they did is they looked at all of our enrolled students, their grade level, the schools they attend, where they live, and the type of home they live in. And they calculated a factor. So if we have 100 students in Carolton that are living in single-family homes that are detached or unattached, they came up with a factor that a single-family home in the Carolton Elementary Zone would provide for elementary students. And they did the same thing for middle and high. For all across the county, as well as the different types of homes. So you have single-family homes attached, like a townhouse or a condo. You also have apartments, and you may have mobile homes. So each of those housing structures was looked at, where they are, and the number of students we are already seeing from those.
Using our current information.
Using our current information, and then they apply it to new developments coming into those same areas with those same types of buildings. And so then we can take that number and say, oh, for elementary in Carolton, it's a factor of 0.26. And we look at these and say, we've got 800 homes coming into Mallory Point, so 0.26 times 800 gives us how many elementary kids at this school. And that's where the numbers come from. So it's a lot of math.
Right. But there's still a lot of variables to it.
Well, it's based on what we currently have. So we're using what we currently are seeing to predict what we'll continue seeing.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not, we're obviously gonna have to look at this school. I mean, that's obvious. I'm just trying to figure out the numbers, and thank you for clarifying that.
I mean, you're right, it is a prediction. I mean, it's a prediction.
And basically, as I understand it, maybe this will help, it's more statistics than anything else is how these numbers are reached.
I'm just looking at, like, most families, like myself, don't have 6 kids. Okay? And if you look at the national average, and I don't know how they come up with this number either, but it's like 1.2 or 1.3. I don't know where the 0.2 or 3 comes in. So that's what I'm just trying to get at, what they're basing it on. So regardless, it's still an educated guess, is what we're looking at. Okay.
And they do explain it. We do have this on our website, the last yield analysis report, so they do explain it. So maybe looking at that to see how they got their calculations might help to understand.
And one quick thing, just, and then we can move on. Well, I'll let y'all chair. Sorry. In the event, and I'm looking at the list, I'm not going to go into all the weeds on this, but there are some of these projects that are probably never going to get off the ground because of other issues. I know one of them is coming to the table and reducing by 2/3 of its impacts, and that's like 160 students.
Which one is that? Is that the Bridgepoint Commons?
You may not want to.
Yeah,
I'd rather not. I'm just saying, in the,
Just be
event,
you probably
Oh,
got
some of
developers
them
and all.
could be very, very.
I'm sorry, I thought it was maybe public information.
Well, it's possible that some of these may never come online because of DSD challenges outside the DSDs and so on and so forth. So it would be good, I think, maybe to look at those numbers if we feel that's the direction that we feel those developments are headed. Because I think that'll change that number for us as far as the timelines, that's all.
In other words, we need to collaborate on this.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, Ms. Getz made some very good points, I think. And, you know, maybe something we should be doing is, you know, the county has put together, you know, some different task forces, the growth task force, the audit, you know, committee and things like that. Well, maybe the school board, you know, should look at something along those lines for long-term planning as far as when are we going to need a school? How are we going to determine where and when we will need that? And so that we have something concrete to be providing to the Board of Supervisors on a regular basis. And when I say regular, I'm not saying every week, I'm saying maybe every year, maybe every other year. But I think we should really, you know, put something together that we're actively working on this, so when the time comes and the hammer drops, you know, we're not caught flat-footed. We've already got a lot of research done.
So with that, we're going to need to move on, or we're all going to be here till about 12 o'clock right now. So we've talked a little bit about new construction, school construction. On our agenda, we have that next. Just want to touch on that. Is there anything in particular that we would like to discuss? I know we talked about the west side, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, we can't obviously make any decisions now, but I think, you know, it's imminent, right? I mean, even if you look at the second section, you're at your action point of 85% capacity, we need to start talking about it. And Smithfield Middle, I don't know if that means that you need some outbuildings or put the high school in the outbuildings and put the middle schoolers back in their 19 classrooms. I don't know, that's up to you all certainly, but I went with my counterpart Randy and Mr. Cunningham and others. We were at Smithfield High School for the first day of school, and I appreciated the opportunity to be able to welcome the students back on that Tuesday. And Ms. Getz and I were kind of talking just about, you know, where you could put a school and, you know, what's going to happen in the future. We're going to need something, right? And I'm like, well, you know, the county owns a lot of money. I mean, not a lot of money, a lot of property.
She said it.
The county owns a lot of property.
If only that were the case.
And, you know, we do have this TIA and this master transportation plan for the Turner Drive Route 10 area. It's already, you know, pretty tough to drive through there in the mornings, etc. So I wanted to mention I tend to agree with you that to throw another school on that site would probably make those things worse. Although we have planned for additional students in the master plan, the TIA, something that all the constituents got together, the developers and the county and Planning Commission, everybody got together and looked at what future modeling looked like, I think through 2045. And that also included an increase in students at that site. And so the recommendations that we're currently trying to figure out how to fund include 2 left-hand turn lanes onto Turner. You probably read about that from the north side, right? And a single turn lane on Turner, not on 10, everybody thinks on 10, but on Turner to accommodate some of the commercial business that we desperately need in that part of the county. And remember, commercial business doesn't produce more students, so that's good when it comes to these numbers. You know, services, not students. So in any case, we do need to start talking about new school construction, and I think we would love to leave it up to you all as to, you know, say, hey, elementary school takes less money to build, right? So does it make sense to have 1st through 5th, for example, to match, you know, the Windsor categories and just even rework the whole thing, the lines, and I think everything's on the table, right?
So with the Hardy Elementary, because hopefully some people will watch this meeting, so this is probably a recap for everybody here. We were very fortunate as a community that Hardy hit when it did. Randy can probably speak to this better. Obviously the cost went up on us, but the bond market was much more favorable, and we were able to reorganize some of the debt in the county. Maybe you could speak to that briefly, but my point was, we originally went with the idea that we were going to have to raise the tax rate to accommodate this school. And the fact that we didn't have to raise the tax rate wasn't because there was a whole bunch of extra money sitting around. It's because we were blessed, and some people did some really good work. Randy, could you just briefly speak on how we were able to not do, wasn't 4 cents what we originally looked at?
Yeah, we were looking at 4 cents, and we were able to get the rate, so the long-term rate on Hardy is at 1.8 something percent, under 2%. And with, I'll never forget Mr. Grice, thought we were building a new school for around 20-some million. Even when it came in at 30-some million, that still looks like a bargain now. So, and even the higher cost. But yes, we were able to refinance a lot of existing debt, saved about $6 million over the life of the bonds, and we were able to bring in the rates at much, much lower than we anticipated. So we're able to accommodate that increased debt without any increase in the tax rate.
So as y'all can imagine, nowadays, if we were just going to do a Hardy, it would be a completely different situation because the bond market, of course, with the cost of construction, et cetera. So, we know it's a daunting task to look at a new school at any time, but comparatively speaking, one would think it's only been a few years, it shouldn't be so bad. It's probably a whole lot worse than a lot of people probably understand.
I did have one quick comment about the timing of a school. So these numbers are based on full build out, correct?
Yes, sir.
So just to give you an example, and I can relate this. So Ben's grant developed the whole, without the apartments, was about a 7-year build out. So I remember when I came to work here 8 years ago, there were 5 houses under construction and 1 model house. So it took almost 8 years to build that out, and now the apartments are building out. So some of these projects are, probably 10 or more years building out before they're going to be completed. And I did want to just comment one quick question about Turner Drive. So all the models, all the engineering we've done has shown the West Side Elementary School on that, on the practice fields back there where it's been discussed. That does not significantly contribute to the traffic on Turner Drive because it's at non-peak hours. So the school traffic doesn't match up with your peak volumes in the mornings and afternoons. So therefore it contributes very little to the intersection there as far as the traffic volume.
If they measured it at like 8 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Well,
something like that, Jameson.
Every TIA traffic improvement plans show based on PM peak hours, which would be 5 p.m. That's when your highest traffic volumes anywhere are. And because school gets out at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and middle schoolers don't drive, so you're not going to have the same traffic you would have from
4 o'clock at the elementary school.
4 o'clock at
Yes,
elementary.
sir.
Okay.
We still see
Still
a
before the
significant
peak
amount of
traffic.
parents that do drive, and, at almost every school we've got, there's congestion when school's letting out.
But you still don't have the same traffic volume as a peak generation of people getting off work and returning home. So
No,
it doesn't
I
match
understand
up.
that. I understand that completely.
That whole study's online, so you can look at that too, but it does look at, Randy was right, the peak PM hour around 5 o'clock.
Perhaps the solution is that in the coming months, the school board will get with the staff and we can get around the table and talk about some options, come up with some proposals.
So, kind of along the lines of that, I do have a proposal. What is the feeling for if we had to do a school? Let's go with 7 years. So we got some time, not a whole lot, but some time. At some point in time, when we really identify our needs and what we need to do next, would this be something that the board would entertain doing a referendum and actually vote and let the citizens vote on a tax increase to go to just 2 schools? I know this kind of dives into the board session, but I just food for thought because I can think of a county that I know real well that did that with, and of course they have to because the way CIP is structured in their county. But they did that with public safety, and that's how they doubled the size of their public safety. They took some education, but at least at the end of the day, the citizens understood what was really needed. It wasn't some people on the board, either board, that just wanted to spend money or grab some more money. It was really needed. So,
I don't know the legalities of it, but I'm all about a referendum.
I don't know.
We're not. Wight County had a referendum years ago that citizens said you're not required to have a referendum for issue bond.
Well, I guess you put it on. You could put it as a non-binding. You could vote on it,
I don't know
right?
if you have an advisory referendum.
I've got to do some research on
That would purely be an advisory referendum because it's not.
It's
required.
It's non-binding because we had that with the statutes. We had, and I know that was a situation that the state set some certain guidelines aside. But at the end of the day, we realized it was non-binding. But at least we didn't do it. But if we had, it would have still allowed the citizens to voice. And then at the end of the day, we had to make a choice. But anyway,
So let's keep talking about it.
yeah, absolutely. All right, move next.
Let's do that. We've got strategic
You got
plans,
that.
and you've got strategic plans.
That sounds like a good one to go to.
I spoke with Chairman Marsh about the fact that when I was in my VACO supervisors training this whole past year, they encouraged county budgeting to be closely tied to your strategic plan. And so I came back and I asked Randy, hey, where's our strategic plan? He said, well, we mostly use the comprehensive plan, right? There's an extensive list of actions and activities that support the 7 sections of the comp plan. And I brought my copy right here, but all that's online, Envisioning the Island. It's a fantastic document, and I know I passed along to Sharon Marsh the progress that we're making as a county in each section. A couple things. One, as a board of supervisors, we're meeting to talk about a strategic plan because we do have a kind of an accessory document that was written in 2013 that has other activities to support the comprehensive plan. We're meeting to talk about that, super excited, on October 25th. So we'll be going on a little retreat talking about strategic plan then at the end of the month. So I thought it was really important that we understood where you guys are headed, right? And what your strategic plan says and what things you think are important. And so thank you for providing a color copy here this evening. I'll say in the comprehensive plan, I'm not sure when I shared with you, Chairman Marsh, the actions that are kind of elicited on the comprehensive plan that have to do with educate the I-sle. I don't know that you had ever seen those before.
I have not.
Yeah. So, you know, there are a few things. I did bring my copy this evening, but just to have a general conversation about where you guys are headed and if you had any input for us as we go into our strategic planning activity at the end of the month.
I think I would recommend turning this over to Dr. Kramer and staff. I mean, they've been in the weeds with this since day one, well before.
Thank you, sir. And I would say, prior to my arrival, this school division has done a lot of work around the strategic plan. In fact, one of the things, as I shared, when I did my due diligence before coming here, I was very impressed with the amount of work that has gone into the strategic plan. So, there's strengths and gets, if you will.
Yeah, so when we created our strategic plan, we went through a year-long process of engaging with stakeholders. And we developed these focus areas, and since that time, we've had objectives and strategies. Last year, we worked on KPIs. And
Would you explain what a KPI is?
Key performance indicators. Sorry. We love acronyms. We use a lot. So we work on those, and now where we currently are is we are looking at identifying people to be responsible and timelines of when those tasks will be done. So we're still working on our strategic plan, but Ms. Briggs and I did have an opportunity to kind of take a look at your plan and looking at ours, and I think we've identified some things that we would just like to bring to your attention as you work on your comprehensive plan. One is compensation, and I think that's an area that we really will need to focus on for our staff. We are seeing increasingly that we are having a hard time competing with surrounding areas. We're getting ready to lose an assistant principal to a neighboring division because that person's going to make close to $20,000 more for the exact same job. Teachers, the same thing. And again, yes, we've been able to fill positions. We offer a great environment. But at some point, a new teacher is going to say, I can make $15,000 more to go to Chesapeake. You know what? That's a lot of money. I'm not coming to Isle of Wight. And I just want us to really be thinking and be aware that that is a problem that we are facing, and it's going to get worse because we're falling further and further behind where other divisions are going. And so compensation is huge for us, and we talk about it a lot internally. We want good people. We want qualified people to teach our children. We have to pay them. So compensation is one area. The other is facilities, and that's something that we already are talking about. Upgrading our facilities as needed. Again, very important for us and for our students. And I think our families support that as well.
Before you move on, if I
please.
we will talk a little bit more about facilities in a moment. I extend a huge debt of gratitude to the Board of Supervisors and our board for making that recommendation, a huge investment in our students. And again, Dr. Coleman and staff will share a bit more about that in a moment, but wanted to note that before moving on.
Yes. And then the last thing we identified is program offerings. We would really like to have a conversation about expanding our CTE programs. Those have been very important, I think, for our community and for our students, but we still have students who are not graduating, going to college, and they don't have a skilled job to go to as well. And so we would like to increase that for our community. So I would like for us to look at what are those CTE programs that our students, we have to be able to show students are interested. That's number one. We have to show that. That's required. But what are they interested in, and what could we feasibly bring online in the coming years? So those are, Lynn, anything else that you would like to add to that?
No, and I'll say, we did look at what the county has, and some of those, especially with the CTE offerings, tie right into some of your economic development strategies in that document, because the students are graduating and they can come back and be employed in our county and be productive citizens right here. So I think there are definitely things there that already align between our two plans.
Yeah, we just had a great presentation by the Eastern Virginia Regional Authority. It's EV-RIFA is what it's called, but the shipyard's going to need like 40,000 more people to work in maritime in the next coming years. And we've actually gone to market all across the country as Hampton Roads to try to attract more businesses here, and have received the, and I sit on that regional authority or the regional board, but we did receive the contract. It's a collaboration between the UK and Australia and the United States, and we're going to build like 14 new submarines in the next several years. So several for Australia, a lot for the United States. They say government military spending is at World War II levels. And so that whole presentation is online from our last meeting last Thursday. It's so good, and it really inspires you as to how Hampton Roads as a market, we've gone after these things, to strengthen our economy just here locally. I would love to see more with maritime. I mean, obviously that's a huge need and something that we've gone to market for.
So one of you had spoke about, and there's no doubt that at the end of the day, we've got to be able to provide for our families. Our teachers need to be able to provide for their families. I think at the same time, as we try to pursue making sure we have competitive wages, we need to reassure our citizens, and in particular, more importantly, the educators, that we take care of them. Only 1 in 10 people leave because of money. Most of the time, it's the environment they're in. Most of the teachers I know, and not to exploit this, they do it truly out of service to the next generation. We've seen that in many people that sit at this table. So I think that it is very important that as we try to make sure we accommodate the funding aspect, that we're all doing the best we can. And from a board member, and obviously people know my background, I hate to keep pounding that, but you look at our volunteers in the county. Volunteers are only going to be around as long as they feel appreciated and respected. Teachers are no different. I mean that in a very positive way. And unfortunately, there are times perception trumps facts, and all you got to do is dive into social media right now, and you'll catch a glimpse on some unfortunate things that are out there. Now, I realize that oftentimes they're personnel things, and they can't be discussed, and I think that's more than professional and appropriate. But I think we need to make sure our citizens, our teachers know, our educators, that we're doing our very best to make sure they get internal customer service and they're taken care of. Because I would hope that the experience that you have in Wight County dealing with parents and students is far better than, you mentioned Chesapeake, than maybe Chesapeake. I would hope. But y'all would know better than I. But I just think that needs to be brought up. That's the community I grew up in. I mean, the teachers I had were just wonderful. And I doubt very seriously many of them did it for the paycheck. They would have gone out for a paycheck. But anyway, I digress. I don't want to mention that.
Sir, if I may, when we talk about infrastructure, one thing, and I've mentioned this, every year since I've been on the board, is an updated fleet services facility.
I think we're going to run right into that, Mr. Collins.
Very good. Then I will wait till we get to that on the agenda.
Yeah,
We're ready to go for the strategic plan? That takes us right into anticipated funding requests.
Okay.
And I think Dr. Martin's got some prepared. We're probably going to answer questions.
No, Dr. Coleman and I had talked about this extensively over the past few years, and he's going to provide some detail. And I'm just looking at the conditions that our people are working in, and they've got a very old building. They don't have all the tools that they need. They need an updated facility. They need modern tools. And they need to have some level of comfort while they're working. They don't need to be, spreading their rear ends off in July, and freezing, and having to take gloves off, while they're climbing under a bus, in December, January. So I think we really need to look at that, and I can talk offline with some of the things that I've seen in the past with other types of public-private types of partnerships that we might be able to offset some of the funding on this. And I don't mean to say we go public-private, but we share with other public organizations to help cover some of the costs. With that, Dr. Coleman?
If I may, before Dr. Coleman presents, so that you all know, supervisors and members of our board of schools of community, these items, most of these are extensive of what we requested last year. As I before mentioned, a number of the items we requested last year were funded and supported, a huge investment, so definitely do not want to be remiss and not thank the board of supervisors and our board for that huge investment in our students. So I think the fleet services building as well, I think the majority of these, if not all of these, perhaps with the exception, Dr. Coleman will speak to this, other than the band room, they were on our request for last year. So with that, I turn to you, Dr. Coleman.
And Dr. Kramer, does everyone have a presentation?
We're sharing.
Okay. Dr. Kramer, I just want to start off by saying, I would be remiss if not mentioning something concerning.
Looks like you can still all of it at the same time.
We have another one.
We're still sharing.
Oh, we're still sharing. We'll work on sharing.
While we're getting organized, I'm gonna echo that. Doc Kramer nailed it. Listen, you guys got the hard job. The school board racked and stacked all this last year, and we spent a lot of time on this. We came up with a laundry list, flicked it over to you fine folks, and you guys said this is what we can fund, figure it out. On behalf of Wight County Schools, I'm very much appreciative and grateful for that. This is a heavy lift. Dr. Coleman's going to get into some of those things. This is the leftovers. So we'll go into this, I think, with the same approach. These are our needs when we acknowledge and accept the fact that there's only so much money in the bank. Absolutely. So on that, Doc Coleman.
All right. And I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned a couple of things when we talk about new school construction. Just a couple of different pointers that we want to keep in mind. As we're looking at moving in new school construction and building and looking at all of the different opportunities that we're going to probably move down the road towards, keep in mind that there are some items at Westside right now that we need to just keep in mind that it's there, meaning a new roof. I'm gonna need a new roof on Westside. That's probably $1.2 million for the new roof. Remember, Westside was built in 3 different portions. So when you're putting all of that back together, just keep that in mind. Right now, funds being used for Westside to keep that up, to keep the roof up, and different things of that nature. Same thing with the piping. There is a 2-inch pipe that runs from one side of Westside to the other side of Westside, and it's 6 feet in concrete. How do I know? Because it has blown twice. And we've had to actually dig through it. So while waiting and planning, just keep that in mind that that's something that we need to keep a look at. All right. But that's it. The anticipated funding request. As Dr. Kramer alluded to, we're going to look at several different requests today. Most of you have heard before over and over again, but I just want to go into a little detail about these requests. Fleet Services Facility have 3 options down there. These are the 3 options that we looked at before, years before, last year, the year prior, and things of that nature. One option for the $775,000 is to add an additional bay. Second option is the new facility, same size as current, just up to date, safety. All that. At this time, there's no workers or technician bay to get under a school bus. All school buses have to be jacked up from the floor, which is not a safe situation at all. And then the third is the new facility, 4-bay with updated safety measures. So when I say safety measures, nowadays, when you're working on cars and different things of that nature, all you have to do is reach over and hit a button anytime something is going on. It'll stop the machine, stop everything automatically, and it would actually call the 911 services, everything. We don't have that. So we're still, once again, old school, where you have to, actually, if something occurs to an individual, and there was an accident just the other day, if something occurs to an individual, hopefully someone is around, they can pick up the phone, actually, and go and get some help. The school buses, you're gonna see that on there as annual.
What if I may add, Dr. Cole, you have a picture before, you're gonna share?
Oh, yes.
Images of.
Okay.
No, I don't want to miss your presentation, I'm just telling you.
I was just going to go, let me jump right in. But yes, we're going to talk about the Dr. Kramer has sped me up, weapons detection system, bleachers, ADA seating, sidewalks, Smithfield band, and boiler room, and tennis courts. Those are the items that are on the anticipated funding request. As you can see, the first one is page 1. The structure was built in 1955, and there's no really need to go into all of the details because the school board and the board of supervisors have seen this several times before. As you can see, those are our buses, when we work on them, hanging out the backside. We cannot close the bay door. So in the winter, it's cold, and in the summer, it's hot, and the gentlemen have to work in the weather. The next is the sped buses and the general ed buses. As you can see, last year, the general ed buses and sped buses was maybe $10,000 less, inflation. Now we're looking at $155 or $160 per every regular bus, 72 passengers. We're still trying to get to our rotation cycle, which is 5 to 6 buses per year. Last year, well, we're very, very thankful for the 5 buses, and hopefully we can continue to get back on that rotational schedule. Still, 44% of all buses were manufactured in 2010 on Friday. Now, these buses have literally exceeded life expectancy. And once again, we're thankful for the funds to purchase the buses for last year. The next is the weapons detection system. These weapons detection systems will be for the middle schools and for the elementary schools. Once again, this is our anticipated ask. We'll get into what was already purchased later in the presentation. Next, as was pointed out, the compensation study. The compensation study was one of those items that was on the agenda for last year, but due to budgetary constraints, it was actually cut and pushed down. So that's what's back up. After that, the Smithfield High School field bleachers. The bleachers, as you already know, are 30 years old, and I do for replacement. I put a picture at the bottom side looking at ADA accessibility and different things of that nature, which we currently do not have. This will be a custom design layout to fit the field. As you already know, we have the fields in place. So with that said, getting the bleachers necessary to fit the field, not just buy some little universal set that doesn't fit and costs a lot of money.
You can do it for the $210,000?
It only depends about the track. We're going to get right into that with the cost. Next is, if we do not go with the bleachers, we still need to ensure that Smithfield High School is ADA compliant, seat with sidewalk. Now, we don't have accessibility from the seating at this time to the restrooms at this time. So if we're going to run seating from the seating area to the restrooms, we want to know exactly where we're going to do it. Because once we lay the concrete is where we lay the concrete at. I think that everyone has seen what exists at this time, and I think everyone has seen that we probably need to do something a little bit better. That's what we're asking for the accessibility. Next picture is of the Smithfield High School tennis courts. If you remember last year, it was the Windsor High School tennis courts and the Smithfield High School tennis courts. Windsor was blessed enough to receive a grant from OVC, so that paid for their tennis courts. But we still have the Smithfield High School tennis courts also. All right. Now, the update for FY, the funded projects. So, okay, were there any questions? I know Ms. Perkins, you had a question concerning the bleachers?
Oh, that number just seemed a little low, especially with current pricing.
You have two ways of doing the bleachers. Since the bleachers are stainless steel, you can actually reuse the bleachers and redo the actual structure itself, and that's the price that we're looking for. We can just either toss all of the bleachers and redo all of the structure, or reuse the bleacher tops. So we're looking at trying to reuse the bleacher tops due to the fact that stainless steel, they will last.
That's what this cost is?
Yes, that's what this costs.
Stainless steel, not aluminum?
I'm aluminum, I apologize.
Okay.
They're not forced for that.
Yeah. Gold plated.
Gold plated.
I thought we bought 6 buses. You just said 5 this
5
year.
buses.
Just 5?
We purchased 5 buses this year.
I thought it was 6. I guess not. They probably got more expensive too, right?
They did. Ms. Wells can tell you, we're actually, after we did the entire PO, we're actually $1,000, $2,000 over. Yeah, absolutely. So we actually had, yeah, so they did go up the whole time.
And the other thing you don't have a photo of, and you mentioned that, and I think I missed you earlier, the boiler room conversion.
Yes. And I'm just talking about the boiler room conversion just a second. And thank you there, Dr. Franklin. All right. So I think that everyone knew last year one of the school board objectives was to help out with, the arts? It was with the band. And some of the band parents came and different things of that nature. It's expanding the band, building new closet space for the band, securing more safety for the band, and that's something that we've been looking at for years, due to the expansion of the band. So, in the back of Smithfield High School, those who are familiar with Smithfield, there was a boiler room. This boiler room was a gigantic boiler room with probably a 30-foot boiler that was almost probably 15 feet high. In that boiler room was a lot of junk and the boiler. With that stated, every single year we have to get that boiler checked out. Because anytime a boiler or something like that is on campus, you have to pay the money to get checked out. So what we're going to do, we're going to remove the boiler, therefore eliminating that cost of every single year having to actually get it checked. In the process of removing the boiler and seeing the size of that room, we started thinking about other uses of that room. And that's when we called in our architect, and we started drawing up and thinking through, walking through with the principal, with the band teacher, different individuals of that nature. And now we're looking at renovating the old boiler room into a state-of-the-art band room. So that's what that's about.
So that's the one new item. That's the
one new item. That's the only item that wasn't on the list last year. That's right, Mr. Chairman.
So reusing old space for something new.
Which also helps with the safety of the exterior door in the band room currently.
Absolutely. The band room has one of the only double doors leading to the outside. And with that, you have kids going in, you have kids going out constantly, especially after school hours. We all know that you can just pull right up in front of Smithfield High School and hope that nothing, ever occurs of that nature. But securing those doors, that is the issue. So replacing those doors, ensuring that safety is a number one priority with those. And that's something, once again, that the school board members pointed out over the last couple of months. And we should make sure that we're readjusting that thought pattern. So moving them back to a more secure spot in the school would actually behoove everyone also. Are there any questions on those items, the anticipated funding requests?
So will you guys re-rank them? Remember how you guys each did a ranking of what you thought was top? You guys should do that again sometime before
I would hope so.
March? Okay. Because that was helpful. You know, so it's last time.
So that's the one thing that wasn't right last year, so I think it forces us to kind of restack and reprioritize.
Having you all's ranking helped in our deliberation as well, seeing what your mindsets were. Granted, you guys weren't all together on everything, which is fine. I don't think a healthy board should be always all together on everything all the time, but it helped us with some perspectives. That's good.
Thank you, that was great.
So, now, did you guys, I think I got it. Anyway, did you guys do are working on a new office building?
New central office, old market.
Where's that at and how much was that? Is that grant funded?
And I think that's why we didn't put it on here, I
Right.
think because we're using state dollars all the time.
Absolutely. Every dollar that has been spent on CO is grant funds. I've been tracking it very, very closely, and that's for manpower and everything we've used on that building. There's several different questions that will be coming to us, will be on Thursday night, just dictating out exactly the man hours separated, what man hours were 100% grant funded for the CO. Where do we stand at right now? On Wednesday, we should be getting our final plans back for submission. So our final plans for submission, and then we can actually move forward. And moving forward meaning bring in everything, meaning sheet rock, redo everything, and actually start the move-in process. So that's where we're at with new central office at this time.
Do you have a timeline in mind?
I do have a timeline, and Dr. Freeman has a timeline.
My timeline hasn't been met. My timeline, we would already pay that, so thank you for the question.
Yeah. The timeline is, I hate to say as soon as possible, because that's not a timeline, but let's say for the full move-in will be.
We're gonna hold you to that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
exactly. Let's just say for the beginning of the move-in. And why I said the beginning of the move-in, the new central office will be encompass 2 wings. One wing will be for the instructional services and different things of that nature, and the other wing will be for the operational services, because the operational services need to be attached to the warehouse. So that's where we will be designing. The operational wing will be able to move in a lot quicker than the instructional wing, just based off of the spread out and different things of that nature.
How much, do you know how much the grant was?
The grant was, to begin with, I don't want to just throw out numbers, but the grant was 2.4.
2.4 million?
It was 2.4 million. Now, how much did we use on central office? That's the question. Now, that falls back into, absolutely. That falls back into the $800,000 range. $664,000 went for RRMM when they actually redid the building, when it was based off of the 90% completion from the original plans and the other 10%. So that's the 664. That went to tying the central office into the water tower, tying it into the HSRD and all of the HSRD.
HSRD, I'm trying.
Thank you.
I'm trying.
Mr. Grace.
Suspended in memoriam.
And all of the parking areas and making sure that it fit in with the BNP pond and different things of that nature. So that's what those funds went for.
Do you feel you'll use the full 2.4 million-ish for that project, or you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I might use 1/3 of that money for that. Things of the nature, I have a clear tracking system for all of the grant funds.
Are you able to use those grant funds for any of the things that we've been provided a list of this evening?
I could use them for that, and I've done that over the past. Let's just take, for instance, I believe that last year when the Smithfield Middle School gym floor warped out, I never came to the Board of Supervisors and asked for any funds at all. It was, I think it was $90,000. I paid for it out of that. When the Windsor High School diesel fuel tank messed up, that was another $60,000. I paid for it out of school construction, so on and so on. I have a whole list of items that I paid for out of the school construction fund to ensure they were not coming back, asking the school board to go to the Board of Supervisors and ask for the funds.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, to your question, Mr. McCarty, last year we had on there upgrades to restrooms. You know, many of our buildings are in wonderful shape. The restrooms are aged or dated. We're using those grant funds as well to do some of those repairs and upgrades. So we removed them from the request because, again, we're using some of those grant dollars in some of our schools.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you bring these questions, I'm reminded on the fact that I need to stay in my lane because y'all have a very difficult job. You know, to me, and I get it, there's grants there and if you don't use them, but we've got ADA compliance issues and yet we're doing whatever. So I have to get back in my lane and say, y'all got to prioritize these things instead of Mr. Acre that just lived in the county does kind of drop that on a meeting. Just sitting here wondering why we, did a central office, but we need band room and ADA compliant stuff and bleachers that are apparently getting to a point that they need to be replaced. But that's not my job. My job is to balance everything out, so back out and get back in my lane.
But if I may, Mr. Chair, speak to that point, I think we're trying to use our dollars very prudently and efficiently and trying to meet all of the various needs. Because even with moving into the new central office, we talk about capacity. Spriggs and I had that conversation earlier. It's creating more space in the high school because the IT department is also moving with us. So there are residual benefits, not just to central office, but the schools are benefiting from these moves as well.
I think it's important that our citizens hear that.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question.
And there's the warehouse topic too, right? So
Thank you for
that was a
that.
huge part of that.
That's right.
We were earlier,
Well, that's connected to it, yeah.
yes,
That's right.
the gymnasium of the old
That's right.
party is currently an active in-use
Active
warehouse.
with the use. That's right.
Which we were paying $5,000 a month for.
Yeah. When I arrived, we did not have a warehouse, and now we are able to use and actually take off the CIP. A warehouse is going to be, don't hold me to this number somewhere, I suspect around $1 million for the warehouse.
Literally.
But we don't need that. That's the chair mentioned. The gymnasium in Old Hardy is literally today being used as a warehouse. So to your point, Supervisor Akery and Supervisor McCarty, those dollars are being used in multiple ways and are having a benefit throughout the school division.
Right. And when you look at this, piggybacking on that, a 2,500 square foot warehouse with a concrete floor, HVAC control, you're gonna get up there very, very quickly, very quickly, so.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't mention one big expense, was the overage, the cost of Hardy, $735,000 used.
The new cars.
New Hardy,
Right.
yeah. So this was, we did, but, so
Sounds like
everything,
an inside joke.
they had a lot of excess costs that were unanticipated because it couldn't be estimated in the contract.
Right.
So you had, and I just wrote an email, you had Verizon, the HRSD, some pump house new lines, Columbia Gas was a big expense, that was $400,000. And then you had to relocate the power poles to Dominion. So
Right.
all of those expenses were $735,000. And when Dr. Cohen called me, I said, well, don't you have 2.3 million in there? So they did use a big chunk of that, and they didn't have to come back to the county because you had just gotten that money. And
Right.
he kept reminding me about it, so I'm surprised you didn't bring it up.
We're being nice.
Well, that was a huge chunk of that amount was for that, because we didn't have that money budgeted because it was in the contract, it was undetermined because there was no way you could estimate the cost of that until the utility companies came out and provided a cost for that.
And I appreciate the conversation. Typically, at least in my experience for the last many years, when any grant funds typically come through, we typically see them on the Board of Supervisors agenda to do them, to, I guess, allocate the money towards the schools, but this was probably just a direct school payment or something like that, so it's good to know about them and, you know, hear what was done with them and all that stuff, so thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, I want to know how often you can apply for that. Like, how often can we get 2.3 million?
It was COVID.
It was a COVID thing? Oh, okay.
Wasn't that some surplus state funds, I believe?
It came out during the COVID time.
Was
It was, it was several different things.
So Doc, you wanna help us wrap this up and talk about the
Yes.
stuff that we did get done this year?
Absolutely, and these are things that we're truly thankful for. First, the Smithfield High School and Windsor High School athletic field repair. Now, this was a very in-depth project that now I know the community members see where both fields are being played on at this time. The fields were laser graded with the crown down the center of the field. I think that was the big discussion about the crown to match the height of the drain boxes. Install a subsurface drain connected to the box ends. Install 2 rows of irrigation heads, plain surface fields, 8 heads divided into 2 zones per lane. This is saying all of the wonderful stuff that this field has. This is saying that this field is going to last for quite some time.
Fields, plural.
Yeah,
Because both fields are already in, our students our athletes are playing on these fields as the season progresses.
And then, of course, at the end, the field was re-laser graded to ensure compliance. So
We got a new scoreboard and we haven't lost.
Yeah.
On the scoreboard.
All right. Next, we have the Smithville High School and Windsor High School tracks. All right, so the bids were received, and they were significantly higher than anticipated. We're working with contractors on timelines right now. The timelines for the first practice, of course, is February 24th. And next is March 17th for the first outdoor contest. And then the regional start is May 24th. And when I say significantly higher, when we first received the quotes going to the Board of Supervisors, it was $405 per track, $385 I think for Windsor, maybe $415, $420 for Smithville High School. That was the cost. 2 or 3 months later, went back. The cost for one school is $800,000. The cost for another school is maybe $900,000. With that stated, I've been working with the vendors. I've talked to members of with Dr. Kramer, members of the school board. What I'm going to try to do is to subcontract this out. If I subcontract this out, I believe that we can actually make a difference. The track consists of two things: the pavement itself, and then the top. So it's milling and pavement, and then top. So I'm gonna have to really work hard and subcontract this out to get this back down to the original. We broke it into 4 or 5 each track. So that's why it hasn't been completed yet.
But also, you speak to the construction is weather dependent as well.
Absolutely. And the reason why we pushed it off, the reason why it had to be pushed off, as you all know, the pavement can be done at any time. I think we've all seen on Interstate 95 or 64, cold, rain, or hot, they're doing some paving. But it is the top layer of track. The top layer of track cannot go below 60 degrees. If it goes below 60 degrees, it will mess up. It has to be 7 different layers without any water. So it has to be sun for 7 days and have to put on every single day, and water cannot touch it. So when we had an opportunity.
Above 60 degrees.
Above 60 degrees. And when we thought we did have opportunity, when we were redoing the fields, and I was trying to rush it in, get everything done, the field actually needed to be irrigated every single day. So it was a perfect storm, so to say. But then once we found out the reports were coming in higher, they moved from there.
Will you work with some of our local, I'll be discreet, with some of our local vendors? That
100%. A lot of the vendors around here know that that's one thing that we prefer. When we have those local vendors, we can actually go to them and talk to them. And a lot of times they are doing work because they know that their students go here, their kids go here. So yes, sir, 100%.
How much do you think you'll save by subcontracting?
I don't know overall, but I would like to not say right now. I just want to. I want to see what that is.
It's good to know that you're working on that.
Yeah. All right, next is the big one. Carolton HVAC replacement. All right, so just in time, right now we're at 65% review submittal, and that's October 18th. 95% the QC submittal will be October 20th, and that's pretty much it. No plan review and bidding November 19th. So we're going to roll the RFP out on November 19th. Receive bids December 19th. We'll give 30 days to receive bids. And then that's when we will start. We anticipate, keyword anticipate, receiving the permit for approval to move forward in January 2025. And then, of course, the contract will be completing all required paperwork. That's the contractor that receives the bid. And Wight will present the school board for approval to notice to proceed. So that's when we get notice to proceed. All RFP actions are completed, so we're moving forward in January. Now the next page. This is the anticipated after the notice to proceed. February 5th, 2025. That's when the shop drawings will go in on March 5th. Spring, the following items, and the key word in all of this is potentially. The following items could potentially be replaced: chilled water pumps, hot water pumps, boilers, and boiler vent. Why potentially? Because some of the items at Carolton we've already replaced. Over the years, trying to fix the issue, trying to maneuver, we've already replaced them. So some of them will potentially be replaced. Those items with warranties we will keep and get extended use. That will happen in the spring. In the summer of 2025, once again, could be replaced. All of the dedicated outside air units, unit ventilators in each classroom, the cooling towers, chilled water piping, hot water piping, the controls for the building, and testing and balancing, potentially. Once again, we're just looking at what we can save, so to bring that cost down lower and lower. And then, of course, finalization of controls, outstanding efficiencies, and commissioning.
Quick question, I know I asked a lot of money questions, so I appreciate the indulgence. So we've already moved forward on looking at certain, bond structures, things like that to get money. So in the event, this might be Ms. Wells' question as well, in the event that once it goes out to bid, it comes in a good amount lower than what we anticipate, are the proceeds that are left able to be used for other projects with the schools, or is it something that just goes back to the
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
That's what I'm just wondering if there's something that can be,
Yeah,
if there's
when
a
it's
significant savings.
Absolutely. When it's earmarked, when it's earmarked for something, we cannot use it for anything else. But as well, just smack my hand right here.
The bond funds were written specifically for a school project, so we would need to use the funds, the proceeds for a school project, or to repay the bond payments.
But it's not specific just to the HVAC,
No.
it's just a school
That's,
project.
I probably should have asked that. So
No.
in the event, let's say there's a few $100,000 savings, we could apply that to some other piece of a
A
project.
project, a bond payment. Yes.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
All right.
It's also a good incentive to save.
Absolutely. All right. Weapons detection systems. All right, you've seen weapon detection systems twice in this presentation. The first time is anticipated items that we're going to need for the next budget cycle. And this one is what we already have. Systems have arrived and we're working through the implementation process. We have 8 units, which each unit consists of 2 pillars each. And the training is on October 15th and 16th. We'll run through the training. And I do want to pinpoint that we are moving forward on the weapons detection system rollout, but at the same time, we want to ensure that we're doing it the right way and consistent with what we're going to do across the division.
You said this, but just to reiterate, the devices are in.
They're in the division at this time. We're going to transport them.
Installed or just in a
No,
warehouse?
that's.
In a warehouse, yeah.
Yes.
And remember, these weapon detection devices are moving. So when we talk about being installed, it's installed where county. We move them out to the football field, we have them on the inside, so it's different things of that nature. All right. And finally, we have the, once again, yearly rotation cycle, replacement of 5 to 6 buses per year. I was going to leave it open. We raised it from, it was, once again, 150,000, 160,000, 145,000, I apologize, to 150,000, just for the inflation that had occurred the first time.
So with the buses, do they offer any discounts for prepay? You order buses?
Nothing for prepay, not that.
If you pay up front, like other manufacturers, they'll, if you have the money up front, they'll offer you some discount because they get to sit on the money.
Right. I can definitely check on that, and I can get back to you.
I mean, it sounds like y'all are extremely creative, a way to save and use money. Just didn't know if that had been looked into.
You're right. Not at this time, I don't believe, but I don't want to speak for Mr. Fike and Mr. Sullivan, the way that they plan, to proceed.
You speak to the timeline it takes, how long for a bus to be delivered once we
Order
it for it, yes.
Yes, the average lead time on the bus is 12 to 18 months. So, thank you, Dr. Kramer. So we actually ordered this bus on May 31st of 2024. So our expectation is to get it in May 31st, 2025.
At the earliest.
At the earliest. Right. So, and there was a lead time at one point of 18 months, but it's had reduced now. So the lead time can fluctuate depending upon when we order the buses. So the 5 buses that we're extremely grateful for, we're not even going to receive those buses until next year.
Yeah, that's the last one there, Mr. Baker.
So, we have the proposed new Windsor Library. You want to speak to that, Randy?
Yes, so if you look at this large map in front of you, we added this today, to bring this up tonight. Dr. Coleman, Donna Robertson, myself, Tony Wilson, and Ben Neal from the library, regional library, and also William Saunders, town manager. We met out on site in front of Windsor Town Center a couple weeks ago. To back up why we did this, we put our project out for bid for expanding the Windsor Library, and it was $800,000 just to add a 1,800 square foot wing onto the building. Well, it's about 2,400 square feet if you include the space upstairs, but it was just astronomical. We had previously put out for bid, it was $600,000. During the pandemic, we waited, we thought things would come down, it actually went up. So Tony is our public works director, and he said, you know what, if we're gonna spend that much money on adding on to basically a house, we'd probably be better off to just build it from scratch. So he proposed, I talked about this, he proposed that we look at the property in front of Windsor Town Center, which is owned by the schools, and you'll see this little brown box is 5,000 square feet. That would be the proposed site of a new Windsor Library. And then this black area would be parking, which would be, we wouldn't need that much parking for the library, but there are a lot of times when there's overflow parking needs at Windsor Town Center. The schools could probably have some overflow parking. And then we learned when we went out there's a new football group out there, the Windsor Wildcats, that has started using that property, and we're like, well, can we fit this in there? Because we went out the other night, and we had an event at Windsor Town Center, and the people were parked everywhere. They were just all in the fire lane, so this would accommodate a lot of different uses of that property, and I think, so we just wanted to bring this, we just had the board asked us to look at this, so we went out there, took a look at it, staff met on the site, it seemed like everything could fit on that property. The only thing apparently has been somewhat used out there is the baseball field or softball field there. So we felt like that everything could be shoehorned in there and everybody could have use of that property that's really not being used right now outside of the field area.
Right, and this would allow not to touch the actual softball, baseball field, so everything can stand exactly as it is, and still get the use out of the open field with the youth league football. So
it's really just excess land out there that's really not being used for anything. And this football team is there's 150 members, I believe.
Yeah, so it was 150 students using that off and on from the Windsor area, so that's outstanding.
This could actually be very beneficial to the Windsor High Band too, because right now they're practicing behind Georgie Tyler with a football field there to practice on would be phenomenal.
Right.
So they're practicing down in the lower left-hand corner? Yeah. So the library being located there, we felt like it had a lot of benefits. You've got seniors who have programs there in the Windsor Town Center, so that would give them access to a library right there on the same site. You have kids programs in the summer. We have summer camp programs there that would put the library right there for them. You can off the map here. There's some large developments right in the close vicinity of this property that would provide walkability for the kids and their parents for the library. It's right along, of course, the Windsor sidewalk area, and of course, the Windsor Library is not just for the town of Windsor; it's for that whole end of the county. So this would provide a lot better visibility and access by being right there on 258.
I'll say that as a Windsor resident, 2 kids that frequent the library, thanks to my wife, not me. I think the whole thing's great. I really do. And I know that the fine folks that work at the Windsor Library would be ecstatic One lady in particular literally cried when she found out that it wasn't gonna happen the last go around, so I think it's awesome.
Well, just rough estimate, we're looking at probably, by the time you get everything involved, probably about $2.5 million for this project, but even if it's more, you're getting a brand new building, a much bigger building, and it would also provide the additional parking that is sorely needed in that area and something that is used by the whole community.
Just out of sheer curiosity's sake, is there any thoughts on what you're gonna do with the old library?
So I actually talked to so it's an odd situation, the town owns the dirt and we own the building. So it's a joint use facility, so either, probably a couple of different options, either the town buys the building from us, we sell the building and land together, or it's repurposed in some other use. So the short answer is no, we haven't, but there's a lot of different options. But it's complicated because we don't own the land, they own the land. And actually, the building was built by the Windsor High School construction class years ago. Back before it was called CTE. Yeah.
Am I reading this right, Randy? Is the property across from this space we're talking about HDR, is that high density residential?
I think it is, yeah.
So does the Board of Supervisors, how do you proceed? Do you need us to take action to, I'm assuming you have to draw something up for us to take action, but I think you could get some sort of a feel for the school board just right here, right now.
Consensus.
A good field consensus, and then the county attorney can reach out and get any necessary action items or whatever.
My first question would be to Dr. Kramer, is there any concerns that we're not seeing with respect to Georgie Todd?
No, I had a initial conversation with Dr. Coleman. It looks like this would be a win-win. I love the idea that you posed, Mr. Pollock, because our Windsor High School students are practicing the band because of a lack of availability. They're going to the middle school. So I don't see any negatives or disadvantages that this would pose for our school division.
The only thing we also talked about after we found out this large football group is up there is maybe having some restrooms on the back of the library that would be accessible, because I think right now they're having to bring in, well, initially they wanted to use the town center, and so that was unexpected apparently. But maybe have some, because they're bringing in porta johns out there.
Yep.
That might be an opportunity to incorporate that in the design to have some.
That was certainly a point of contention with Windsor Town Council.
Oh, yeah.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it never ends, never ends there, which is the field, because then we need bathrooms and concession stand and lights and everything else. Smithfield just found that out.
Windsor, the town of Windsor doesn't really have a simple flow like that. We've got the library where it is now and this little bitty park, but there really isn't like a community place. We don't have a downtown, we don't have I think that's a step in the right direction. We're having like a nerve center, if you will.
The upkeep for the field and all of this isn't going to be on the school system, is it? Is that?
No, so I guess we probably have to carve out, subdivide the property, because the rest of the Windsor Town Center is on land owned by, or the school system owns that. But probably we would have to carve out something for the library itself.
It would be very similar to what we did with the Windsor Town Center.
Right. Yeah. I'm saying, we would have to subdivide this to put the building on.
That's a good opportunity for
Right.
Yeah.
So for the sake of conversation and getting a consensus, if the county were to present us with some sort of an easement or transfer of property, would we be in favor or not?
I'm good.
I would say yeah.
Yeah, however you want to do it. It could be an MOU, it could be transfer of property, it could be a rental. It could be.
The point is y'all like to move forward,
Yeah.
so we can work it out in detail.
Yeah, there you go.
This is one of those things, when people, we talk about money and things like this all the time. But projects like this and other things that come up through the course of the year, I know it's easy to scream against certain projects that the board may or may not approve, and every citizen does it, school board members do it, board of supervisors, everybody does it. But particularly our commercial proffers that can be utilized in different ways help to pay for this kind of stuff that we scream about. And so I just want to give some context and some perspective. And some of the decisions that perhaps are made at different levels, try to keep those kind of things in mind, because that's money that our taxpayers don't have to come off of to facilitate things that benefits the schools, facilitate things that benefit the county as a whole. And so I think that bears mention, it needs to be mentioned. Because we do talk about money a lot, and money affects all of us, so that's all.
Well, I think it complements to some of the other activities going on, the town center, senior activities that they're using the library. But it's very complementary to what we're trying to achieve here.
Any other?
Do we have a time frame on when
Well,
this might happen?
So tonight was a big first step. So, so we've already contracted, or I think Tony started to engage our architect and engineers on staff to start looking at, the scope and doing a site plan, that sort of thing. So we had funding for the addition of the old library, so we used that to do the planning, the preliminary engineering. And then once we do all that, we can have an estimated cost and come up. But the board had directed us to move forward, so we started that. We had the first meeting, just started to develop that, but the next step was to make sure both boards were in alignment on that.
Okay.
So we appreciate your response.
And chairs, if I could, just to say thank you. We've had a couple of meetings in our new county audit committee that we have formed. And the CFO for the schools, i-sle, has been very, very helpful, very instrumental. We are very, very happy with you all's selection there, and I think she's a great addition to y'all's team, to the county's team as a whole. And so we're just grateful for the opportunity to have her as a part of the audit committee and being there to represent the schools and to answer questions that come up along the way. So we just want to say thank you for that.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I'll just say thanks to staff, because they put this together on pretty short notice. I know the schools did, I don't know how many hoops Mr. Keaton and staff had to jump through, but.
Well, there was a lot of places that were already used, so, and for those who have not been here, we just thought this would be a nice change of pace. This is owned by, of course, the town of Smithfield, and they spent a lot of money while Smithfield Foods to renovate this facility over the last few years, and so it's, I've had some meetings in here before, and it's a good place, so, but yeah, a lot of places are already reserved in advance tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
If anybody needs anything to eat, we still have food over next door from, okay.
Yeah, please take it, it's still hot, the skirt holes are probably still going, so, yeah, please take some food.
Any last minutes? Go ahead.